For years, we were known as Central Veterinary Associates, and we know that some of you were not exactly thrilled with the services that were provided.
But a new day has arrived. We're changing and will now be known as Premier Veterinary Medical Group.
But it's much more than a name change. It's a new management team, a new attitude, with a new state-of-the-art modern facility in Rockville Center, New York.
We're going all out to provide the best possible care for your pets. And that includes 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week emergency care from a team of highly trained professional emergency care veterinarians.
So check out the all-new Premier Veterinary Medical Group. We're ready to serve Nassau and Queens counties with compassion, commitment, and the utmost confidence.
And we have immediate openings for overnight emergency vets with great pay and outstanding benefits. Contact us today at premierveterinarymedicalgroup.com/careers.
It's funny, before we get into this, I want to say to you, I always go, Dark Side's done, man. There's nothing else to talk about. This season was one of the better seasons. They had Terry Gordy, which I thought was really good. Chris Adams, which I thought was really good.
Right.
Last night's episode, really good.
Right.
Harley Race, what's dark about Harley Race? Sandman, Like, why even do it? Like, I don't know. I was like,
Sandman's had some pretty heavy metal moments in his life. I think he'd be a good subject.
But I mean, but it's Dark Side of the Ring. You know what I mean?
I understand, but you know why? You know why I think this latest season is good and it works for you is because some of the ones that are working. Think about a couple of them, at least that you mentioned, as far as this season's episodes. Some of them are not all about murder or suicide or overdose, bro. There's some other subjects going on here because the dark side of wrestling is not just, unfortunately, it's not just about murder, suicides, or overdosing. There's other bad crap that happened too.
Yeah, but sometimes, Jimmy, I think they're always reaching for something. Like, they had Buff Bagwell on. Now, that guy's had a ton of problems. I get it.
Right.
But it's like, I don't know. The story's not even written yet on Buff, and it's like, you know?
He's written a lot of chapters, though. I don't disagree with them doing one, but apparently they didn't do it correctly, right? It's how you do. It's how you do something. It's how you do something. You know, I'm sure there's a version out there that you would love. It wasn't made. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point. That's a great point.
That's all.
Well, I will tell everybody, Season 6 of Dark Side of the Ring, I think will be featuring quite a bit of Monte The Pharoah. That is my prediction.
Cool.
That is my prediction, folks.
Nice.
So we'll see if I come through.
We're the dark side of wrestling talk shows, so it is what it is.
That's for sure.
That's perfect.
That's for sure.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, so last night they did Black Saturday.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows what Black Saturday is, but Jimmy, I wanted to start off with a young Jimmy Farrow. Black Saturday. What do you remember of Black Saturday?
Anger, confusion, no connection. I was pissed. I had no idea. And, you know, it's funny. Deep down in my heart, there's a Yankees and a Red Sox here. And, yes, the WWF is the good guys, and et cetera, et cetera. However, when I did not see my Gordon Soley and my, you know, all the stars of Georgia Championship, when I did not see that, I was furious. I was angry. I was confused. These are not the days of the internet, Mike. We couldn't look it up on our phone to figure out what's going on here. We also love Georgia Championship Wrestling. Why? What was one of the biggest reasons, Mike? It was not 1 hour. It was 2. You just took away 2 hours of what, and what Vince gave us was just, look, this is what I remember. I was like, what is this? I don't want to see this crap. This wasn't even, it didn't have the importance of championship wrestling on Saturday nights at midnight on Channel 9. I was like, what's going on here? So a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, and I'm hoping you'll tell me you had some of that too.
I did. Even though we were WWE guys, Georgia Championship Wrestling gave us a different look. And the way I explain Georgia Championship Wrestling to people is it was very intimate with the viewer. WWE was not intimate with the viewer. Georgia Championship, and the one thing Georgia Championship Wrestling did every week was cliffhangers.
Yes.
Always ended 8:05. with something. You're like, no,
Right.
don't end this, right? Every time.
Yep. It was fantastic. I loved it. It was, and it's funny, you talk about intimacy. It's not that the WWF presentation back in those early 80s, late night, that when we were watching it wasn't intimate. It was, your intimacy connection came with the WWF as a fan through the wrestler themselves, not as much the setting, if you understand what I'm getting at. Although the setting was cool, the studio intimacy that you're pointing out here was what separated Georgia Championship Wrestling from WWF, if you understand what I'm getting at. It was a much more intimate setting, and it worked in those days.
You know what?
It worked in those days.
What's different to me, Jimmy, is tell me if I'm really saying this the right way. So, like we said, Georgia Championship Wrestling was intimate. It was at 6:05 on a Saturday. And then hopefully, if it was summertime, at 8 o'clock, we'd go hang out till 10 o'clock or whatever.
Right.
WWE was like something you weren't supposed to be doing. And what I mean by that is, if anyone grew up in our era,
right,
there was
and in our area.
Right. There was the Twilight Zone.
Right.
The Honeymooners.
Right.
And then pro wrestling. And,
well, don't forget the horse racing.
Well, my point is, when we used to have sleepovers in the summertime, right? Remember, we would be up late. Like, wasn't it always awesome at 11:30 p.m. watching an episode of the Twilight Zone?
Right.
And it was like,
right.
You had the Honeymooners. Odd Couple, Honeymooners, Twilight Zone, and then maybe wrestling on a Saturday night.
Right.
But it felt like you weren't supposed to be doing it.
And you know what? Here's the little secret that only we know because we lived through it. You weren't supposed to be seeing this. It was on at midnight. We were New Yorkers. Wrestling was a dirty little secret, and it was all ours.
Yeah.
Now, when you would tune into Georgia Championship Wrestling, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. Everybody's just gotten done eating supper. Here you go. Here's Gordon. Oh, look at the little kids in the studio with us screaming, and the girls screaming for Tommy Rich and screaming for this one. You know what we had? We had old grandmas at the Allentown place watching the WWF. We had old grandmas and angry-looking middle-aged dudes, and you'd see some young kids like us, maybe, if you were lucky, some teenagers. But it wasn't necessarily family-friendly. Oddly enough, Georgia Championship Wrestling, getting back to intimacy, felt family-friendly in some strange way. We were a dirty little secret. We were on late at night.
Man, I love the way you explain that, dude, because I got to tell you, so I went to a Yankee game yesterday, and the kid that was with me, Jack, he's a friend of mine's son.
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, "You better be grateful you're the age you are now." Because tell me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, and I'm not trying to be a disgusting old man, but the girls nowadays are so much hotter than the girls when we were growing up with.
I disagree.
Wow. No way, dude.
I disagree, and if you look at the women who were teenagers or in their 20s and the 70s, they were absolutely naturally drop-dead gorgeous, okay? But it's all a preference, my friend. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Raquel Welch in 1 million years BC, I'm sorry. You're not going to find somebody
dude,
nowadays.
But you're pulling out Raquel Welch. I'm talking about at the Yankee game.
Sophia Loren. What the frig, bro? No way.
You were talking about Georgia Championship Wrestling. We had grandmas in the WWE, but you would catch some little hotties at Georgia Championship Wrestling in the second row.
Now, wait a minute. Wow. I'm going to really sound like a nerd here. You actually were looking at the girls in the crowd during Georgia Championship. I was watching. I didn't even notice, bro.
All the time.
I didn't even notice. No wonder I was a late bloomer.
Dude,
anyway.
I'll be honest with you. And I think it was your dream, too.
God.
If I could be honest, one of our dreams was to go to Atlanta and go to the Omni and watch a card in the Omni. We felt that the Omni was the Madison Square Garden of Atlanta.
Let me tell you, that was the one of the many big mistakes of Ted Turner over the years. He did not realize, or maybe Vince blocked him. It's possible, but do you realize how much, how well it would have done to have the Omni pay-per-views available to us on New York cable?
Oh my God!
Are you kidding me?
Could you
That's
imagine?
a blown business opportunity if I've ever heard one. So it had to be Vince, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. Vince McMahon getting a stranglehold, getting in bed with the Dolans or whoever he needed to make sure that crap didn't happen. Well, who knows? I'm just speculating.
I will tell you, I pride myself on knowing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that goes on in wrestling, and compared to the matches and who beat who and all that stuff. Last night impressed me so much. I had no idea what the true story was between Black Saturday. So I wanted to bring it up to you, Jimmy. Jim Barnett was, we're going to call him the booker. He ran Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
Georgia Championship Wrestling had investors, or shareholders, they called them. Right. The Briscoes, Ole Anderson, a couple other wrestling guys, and Barnett. Okay. And Barnett was the majority holder.
For Georgia. For
Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Go ahead.
Ole Anderson felt like Barnett was getting a lot of different payoffs and thought that he was kind of sifting from the top, which more than likely, Jimmy, that's what was happening. Okay? And then,
now, who said this? Ole Anderson?
Ole Anderson. Well, there's Briscoe's in this thing. You really got to watch it, but it's like, all right. Ole Anderson says I need to take this away from Barnett, and actually threatens Barnett to throw him off the top of a building, and he takes over the majority shareholding of Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
Barnett quits, and see, now this is where I'm going to go to you on this. Barnett quits, and who hires Barnett? Now, Barnett is a big-time guy here. He's a homosexual in wrestling, which, wasn't taken, wasn't accepted back then. Correct. But he had a lot of strengths. Vince McMahon hires Barnett. This is when Vince first buys the WWE. And the interesting fact about it is, from what I had understood, Senior had broken away from the NWA.
Mm-hmm.
The way they explain it in this one, Jimmy, is that the WWE, up to the point where Vince Jr. buys it, is still part of the NWA. Did you know that?
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, these are people's accounts, but is that really fact?
It's Cornette's account. It was Cornette's account. It was Briscoe's account. It was news to me, too. I thought they had broken away from the NWA.
They broke away from the NWA when the WWF was formed, so I'm really not sure what we're getting at here. Okay? Well, there's a point of origin for everything. Those guys can have their own account for all I care. I actually, now I don't care. I'll watch it. But, now you want to say this? How many years later? Well, look, it all started with Senior having the balls to tell the NWA, no, I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to do it in this territory.
That's what I understood, too. But according to them, Barnett and Vince Jr. go to the NWA meeting, and they turn in their resignation. And they say, we're no longer going to be part of the NWA. And that's when they knew Vince was putting a power play on.
You know what's funny? This sounds very similar to what Vince Sr. did and had already done. So I really don't know what to say about that. I need to watch it for myself. That's basically all I can do.
Well,
not sure I believe it, one way or the other.
Eventually, Vince and Barnett convince all the shareholders, the majority of them, including the Briscoes, who get the biggest blame for it, to turn over to buy their shares from them. Now, there's I'm not going to go through the whole thing. There's some things that happen in between that. But Vince ends up becoming the majority shareholder, hence Black Saturday.
Right. Now, listen, every other thing you've said to me outside of that they turned in their NWA membership cards or whatever, everything else sounds very plausible to me. Everything. But just not that they were still part of the NWA. I knew that they cross-promoted with the NWA, like Backlund would wrestle race in New York and then go to Georgia. They were still somewhat businessly friendly. But, if that's what went down, I find that hard to believe. His father took care of that way earlier.
By the way, Jimmy, Mitch Seinfeld saying Vince was not a voting member of the NWA. Okay, that could be what we're saying here, but then why would he feel the need to resign then? Why even bother? That doesn't make sense to me. You understand what I'm saying?
I can't answer that for you. I really can't answer that for you. I don't have an answer for that, other than did Barnett go on to work?
First of all, Mitch is telling me I'm wrong, but Mitch, again, is clueless as usual because this is from the documentary. This is not me talking. This is from the documentary. But Mitch opens his fat mouth before he, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Listen first, Mitch, then speak.
Well, look, but Mike, just because it's a documentary, like I said, this is somebody's account of this is someone's story of what happened. We know what happens with accounts. There's two sides. I'd like to hear the other side, which we probably never will. You know what I mean? But again, everything you say sounds plausible, but here's my question. Did Barnett go on to work for Vince for an extended period of time?
So Barnett ends up working for Vince, I think, between 83 to 87. They have a falling out. But by that time, Vince goes to Georgia Championship Wrestling. We have Black Saturday, right?
Right.
And it's not doing well.
Right.
All right? He does, but here's the funny thing. And, Vince offered Ole Anderson a job, and Ole told him to go fuck off.
Right. I believe that. Ole Anderson tells everybody to fuck off. That's why nobody liked him. Right? I mean, didn't Ole Anderson pass away like one of the most hated people in the business? I'm not stating to slander. I mean, we've heard it over and over again. I'm not surprised by that. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't. But here's the funny thing, and this is how your memory disappears, right? So Ole at some point goes to Turner and says, hey, your fans are angry. You need to bring back Georgia Championship Wrestling. So Ted gives him a Saturday morning slot.
Right.
And that's where my memory clicked in. Do you remember those bad year and a half of Georgia Championship Wrestling when they were bringing in people that you were like, remember Killer Tim Brooks? I was like, who is this guy?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they were starting to well, first of all, the time slot was just wrong. Look, time slots were very important back in those days. It's not like today where you can click on and watch your program anytime you want. So going from something that we all fell in love with at 6:05 in the evening to suddenly being up in the morning. By the way, I was not a fan when WWF did that either, but somehow I liked it more because the programming was better. But, I just don't think that was a wise thing to do. The time slot screwed everybody up to begin with.
Well, I don't think he had a choice because Vince still had the slot.
Right. Well, you know what? To me, it was the beginning of the downslide and the end of Georgia Championship Wrestling because I don't remember it really recovering much.
But here's the interesting part. So Vince is doing very poorly, right?
Yeah.
His ratings are way down. But Barnett goes and finds a sucker to buy it back. And that gentleman's name was Jim Crockett.
Okay.
So Barnett, and then Vince gets this money, and then he funds WrestleMania, and we all know what happens after that, right?
Right.
Do you think Vince McMahon is more luckier than good?
No. Vince McMahon is good because Vince McMahon recognizes timing. Timing is what has always made Vince McMahon succeed. It's not just the fact that he has his own vision, whether you like it or not. He obviously had a big-time vision for wrestling, and he met those expectations. It's his timing and realizing now's the time to do a certain something. A year goes by, now's the time to do this. A week goes by after that, now's the time to do this. And then nothing happens for 6 months, and then he's like, I think I'll do this right now because I feel that it's the right timing. In general, way more often than not, Vince McMahon's timing, intuition, and instinct have been perfect.
With a lot of luck.
Of course you need luck, but I kind of mix luck with fate. Those two words to me can be interchangeable. So it's almost circumstances. You can call it luck. I don't believe there's any coincidences with the maker. And I feel like everything is basically fate and what you do with that fate that determines your outcome, which is a lot of the times either termed as bad luck or good luck. Sorry to get so deep.
No, I get what you're saying. All I'm saying is Vince in his illustrious career has gone through a lot of stuff and has come out smelling like a rose in about 99% of it. I mean, look at it this way. I'll just use some examples. I'll throw them out there and give me your answer to it. Bret Hart says, okay, Vince, I'm going to WCW. I'll lose to Shawn Michaels. We don't get Vince McMahon to heel, do we?
Right. Well, Vince realized what during the Survivor Series? He realized that it was time to do something really, really dastardly, since he was going to make this shift anyway. You know, do you think Vince really tripped upon the Attitude Era? Coming up with allowing Stone Cold to have input on his character and working with him?
But just think,
you know?
the infamous curtain call, which you love to call and ask these wrestlers about. If that doesn't happen, Triple H becomes King of the Ring. Stone Cold Steve Austin is probably a distant memory.
Well, in other words, thank God for the curtain call.
But this is what I'm saying.
Wow.
When you look at Vince, there's so many things that end up being this case. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Look, you know, all right, let me ask you this way. Do you think it was luck or fate that two college students from UCLA ran across each other on a beach and both discovered that they might want to start a band together called The Doors? Was that luck or fate?
Goes back to the beginning, right? Yeah, you're right.
You see what I'm getting at? I mean, was it luck that you picked that day to walk to that certain spot at the bus stop? You could have been 20 feet away, bro.
Right.
You might have been talking to one of the guys on the football team while I sat there on that curb.
Right. You're
But
right.
you didn't. For some reason, you walked over there that day. Is that luck? Was that good luck for us? Yeah, obviously. But was it fate that you did that?
All right, so here's a question for you then.
Right.
Now I'm really going to challenge you.
Go ahead.
So we're talking about luck and fate.
Right.
Okay? So you got the ringmaster. You got the Red Rooster.
Yeah.
You got Mr. Perfect. Okay? Let me get ringmaster out of that. I don't think that really should fall into it. Let's go with Brooklyn Brawler, Red Rooster, Mr. Perfect.
Right.
Hear me out on this. All three of them could just be stupid, terrible gimmicks, right?
Right.
And don't give me the Mr. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying anybody out there. Don't give me the Mr. Perfect thing. They were doing vignettes of Mr. Perfect throwing a football 100 yards and he's running down and catching it. I mean, think about it. All right?
Right.
Hitting a strike. Then you had the Red Rooster. Is it just luck? Like, Mr. Perfect is known as one of the greats of all time and one of the great gimmicks. Undertaker. How stupid is that gimmick? That's no different than our friend Mike Halick, Mantor. It's in the same realm. Tell me, is it the wrestler who makes the gimmick, or is it just that? Is it luck or is it fate? What is it?
I think it's both. I think that the wrestler does make the gimmick, but if the gimmick doesn't give the wrestler a fighting chance, the wrestler is doomed. For example, Mantor, come on, man. Come on. No. A great guy, and he did his best to sell it, and to his credit, he somehow did well enough for people to still talk and care about him all these years later. Let's get that out of the way. But the poor guy, and he said it to us in private, too. I looked at that mask. I'm like, oh, my God. All right, what do I do here? And what did he say? He went to Vince. I got this. Don't worry about it. But on the inside, he was like, what? Obviously, The Undertaker is way different than Mantar. All right, it was the perfect guy. Was it fate that he should be the Undertaker? Yeah. Was it luck that it fell into his lap that way? Yeah.
But you agree that The Undertaker is a dumb gimmick, right?
No, I don't. I actually don't. Because The Undertaker is what makes Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives so great. Now, I don't know. I don't know if you're a fan of the Friday the 13th films, and a lot of them are terrible, okay? But Part 6 took a page out of the old Universal movies with the ridiculous bloodshed of Jason and the over-the-top nonsense with the maggots and all that crap. They made it work. There's something about The Undertaker that is dark and convincing, and of course it's over the top, but because he's never over the top, the over-the-top gimmick comes across serious.
All right, Red Rooster.
Red Rooster, you're doomed from day one. I don't care who you are. You're doomed.
Why?
And Terry Taylor, let's face it, Terry Taylor was definitely a good wrestler, had a good look, but was not that much of a talker. Let's be serious. And if anybody was going to get stuck with it, if there's a choice between him and Kurt Hennig, there's no choice. So he was going to get stuck. It was fate that he got stuck with that, and bad luck too. See how those words gets right back to what I said.
So if Terry Taylor's Mr. Perfect and Mr. Perfect's Red Rooster, do both gimmicks fail?
Yes. Yes. Because Kurt Hennig would never, ever convincingly want to do it, and his body language would show his disappointment, number one.
But Terry Taylor was a great wrestler. He couldn't have been Mr. Perfect?
No, he couldn't have been unless he somehow suddenly overnight became an amazing, smug man on the microphone, which I can't see. You know, Rick Martel is one of the few people who came from the tushy face, baby face, good guy, and was somehow able to turn that into I'm an absolute ass with the model.
All right, dude, we're going to do a speed round because we literally got 3 minutes before, and then we got